West.
Don't stay unmuted, David. It's dangerous.
You're right. Although I could change my name to Councilor Bowman, and then they wouldn't know.
Just no burping, David.
You think then we'd know what he was drinking?
Something fizzy. At least it's not being recorded yet. Let's get it out of our systems right now.
Councilor Lucas, I've decided I'm never.
Okay, everyone, I think we can begin. Councillor Leary, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And in accordance with our remote rules, I will announce who is joining us remotely. We have Councillors Bowman, Downs, Kalis, Kelly, Krinsman, and Lucas remote. And the rest of us, or most of the rest of us, are in the room. Vice President Lipoff, would you give us the Land Use Committee report?
Thank you very much, Madam President. Decorum typically says that we wear suits and ties. Some of us are, some of us aren't. For me, I was downtown, didn't get home in this weather to throw a suit and tie on, and I just came right here, just to let you know. My streak is over 22 years. What can I do? Okay, there is no report, Madam President, but I do have public hearings to assign.
Please go ahead.
309-23, Ryan McAllister, request to exceed FAR at 93 Ruane Road. These are all for October 3rd. 310-23, Larry Smith, request to allow parking in the front setback at 70 Kingswood Road. 311-23, 2202 Commonwealth Ave LLC, request to allow 4 single-family attached dwellings, to waive lot area and lot area per unit requirements, and to allow a driveway and parking within setback distances at 2202 Commonwealth Ave. 312-23 Lancaster Management LLC, request to allow a 2-story building on an undersized MAN lot at 0 Rumford Ave. And 313-23, request to add 48 patio seats and remove 8 parking stalls to amend Special Permit 17298, parens 2, at 9-13 Kenneth Street, 29 Kenneth Street, and 118 Needham Street, and 122 Needham Street for the Walcott Corporation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Crossley for the Zoning and Planning Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The reports docket begins on page 497 with Zoning and Planning, who met both on September 7th and September 11th. First item is 289-23, Her Honor the Mayor appointing David Boronke to the Auburndale Historic District Commission for a term of office set to expire September 18th, 2026. That was approved 4-0. Let's see, 2 reappointments that were voted out this evening, 278-23, the reappointment of John Rice to the Newton Historical Commission by Her Honor the Mayor for a term of office to expire September 30th, 2026, approved 6-0, and 279-23, reappointment of Doug Cornelius to the Newton Historical Commission, reappointing for a term of office set to expire on July 31st, 2026. That was approved 4-0. And then on Monday, September 11th, we held a public hearing on item 206-23, which is Councilor Lipoff requesting review, discussion, possible ordinance amendments relative to Chapter 30 zoning ordinances pertaining to craft beverage production, to remove the prohibition on bottling alcoholic beverages.
I think
It's on
that's
second
on
call.
second call.
Oh, it's on second call?
Yeah.
I missed that, I'm very sorry. And then 277-23 is the appointment of Peter Lease to the Newton Historic Commission by Her Honor the Mayor, term of office to expire April 19th, 2025. Approved 7-0, 1 abstention. 290-23, the appointment of Richard Alfred to the Auburndale Historic District Commission as a full member for a term of office set to expire September 18th, 2026, approved 8-0. And other items, of course, were our continued and finally completed work on version 2 of the zoning proposal for village centers. And you have all received, I just want to say this for the record, your version 3 maps and text, which have been noticed and advertised and are going to public hearing again next week, Tuesday, the 26th, 7 p.m. I hope that you can all attend. The public hearing has remained open all summer, but we haven't heard from people since July. And of course, then it will go back into committee if you have any further amendments. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Where's Councillor Krinsman? Councillor Gentile, do you have? Okay.
Madam President, through you to the Chair of Zoning and Planning, could we get something that outlines what we expect to happen at the public hearing. I think it's going to be extremely well attended. How do people sign up? How long will they have to speak? Do we intend to make sure that anyone and everyone, if they don't get heard that night, that there'll be another night in which they'll get a chance to speak? I think if all that is known up front, it'll curb some angst.
So Councillor Crossley, would you provide something to the council about that?
I am happy to do that, but because we're in public right now, the public hearing will proceed as it has been proceeding. Everybody will get 3 minutes to speak. There will be a sign up at the podium, and people can submit their interest in speaking online. There are a number of folks who haven't been able to speak, who want to, who haven't been able to attend the previous 2 meetings. My intention is to take up people who have not yet spoken first. It'll be honor system, but that's what I will say over and over again. We will take, of course, people can speak a second time, but I would really like to get through the folks who haven't been able to speak, and I announced that at both the other public hearings, particularly understanding that folks from certain neighborhoods in Nonantum were not able to come in because of the tragedy that happened there. And the evening will be almost entirely devoted to hearing from people. The planning department will have a memo summarizing the amendments that have been voted. I've had the clerk prepare a list of, because there's 4 reports and all those amendments are in there with descriptions and you know, stuff about the conversation and so on. But this is a simplified list, just amendment, who proposed it, vote. Amendment, who proposed it, vote. So that you all can see a list that makes sense. The other thing I have learned already from planning is we have the citywide map. You can expand it on your screen without losing quality. So if you just want to zero in on one section of the city, you may. And but the UTIL is preparing, as they have in the past, maps of the individual village centers as separate, and they're getting that done this week for the Friday packet. If we should set a time limit for speakers, I mean for the evening, but if there's just a few people left, we can take them. If there's a whole lot of people left, we will have to continue the public hearing.
Yes, Councillor Gentile.
That all sounds very good. Just one last question. Signing up at the podium is self-explanatory, but there's a lot of people, I assume, that'll attend online. How are they able to sign up somehow days in advance? Should they wait until that night? How is that going to be handled?
In the past, we have waited until that evening and asked everybody to raise their hands online. That way, and I'll do that anyway, because I'll get an idea at least, because some people wait and raise their hand later. You know, get an idea at least of how many people want to speak. But if folks want to make it clear that they want to speak and be online, they can do so by contacting me or the city clerk. You know, what I understand is that I am not allowed, none of us are allowed to select who may speak first and second and third, so there does have to be some kind of first come, first serve. I'll tell you, it's very difficult when you're standing up there and you have people coming in online to track who's first. Because the screen moves around every time there's an interruption for some reason, or it goes to full view of a person. The boxes literally move around. So I'll do the best I can.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Krinsman, I apologize. I read your name that you were remote, but I saw a coat on your chair, and I thought you were in the room. So I'm sorry that I didn't realize that. But would you give the programs and services report?
I will, though I would like to know who put a coat on my chair, and I'd like them publicly admonished.
Councillor Wright is owning up to it.
Okay, thank you. Programs and Services Committee met on Wednesday, September 6th. The first item was item 280-23. This was the appointment of Paul Holt as a Newton Library trustee. Programs and Services approved that item by a vote of 5-0. Item 281-23, the appointment of Susan Harvey as a Newton Library trustee, was approved by the committee by a vote of 5-0. 298-23, the appointment of Sheila Butts to the Parks and Recreation Commission, was approved by the committee by a vote of 6-0. And the appointment, item 299-23, the appointment of John Lovett III to the Commission on Disability, was approved by the committee 6-0. Next item is on second call. The reappointment of John Neville to the Parks and Rec Commission, item 291-23, was approved 7-0. Item 292-23, the reappointment of Elizabeth Wilkinson to the Parks and Recreation Commission, was approved 7-0. Item 293-23, the reappointment of Byron Dunker to the Parks and Recreation Commission, was approved by a vote of 7-0. Item 294-23, the reappointment of Arthur Magny to the Parks and Recreation Commission, was approved 7-0. And item 295, the reappointment of John Schwartz to the Biosafety Committee, was approved by a vote of 7-0. The reappointment of Dina Conlon to the Licensing Board, item 296-23, was approved by a vote of 7-0. And then lastly, the item 297-23, the reappointment of Michael Goldman to the Farm Commission, was approved by a vote of 7-0. At this point, I'd like to ask for a suspension of the rules to allow an item to be late filed. That item is item 314-23, which is discussion and possible creation of an ordinance regarding vibration control measures, which has been filed by Her Honor the Mayor.
So Councillor Krinsman is looking for suspension of the rules to accept that late filed item. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, no. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. With that, I move the report.
Thank you. The next one is Councillor Downs for Public Safety and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam President. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Public Safety and Transportation met on September 6th. The first item we took up was 30723, Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to increase temporarily the number of sworn firefighters beginning October 1st, 2023 through August 1st, 2024 from the fiscal 2024 authorized amount of 193 full-time equivalents to 197 full-time equivalents. The committee approved that 5-0 as it will be savings both in employee stress and in overtime, particularly in the winter. We then took up 3 discussion items jointly filed with zoning, with public facilities and public safety and transportation committee that we have discussed several times and voted no action necessary. 7-0 on our discussion on sidewalk obstructions. I'm sorry, 5-0 on sidewalk obstructions, on transportation priorities and public works, and on snow clearing operations and enforcement. And with that, I move the report.
Thank you. So was that 7222 also referred to? Were they referred to zoning and planning? I think that might be.
It was also referred to zoning and planning, which has yet to take it up.
I don't know that it belongs in zoning and planning.
I would tend to agree, but I didn't make that determination.
So we'll have to do, okay, so then zoning and planning will have to, even if you vote no action necessary, you'll have to take it up. So we can't vote on that one tonight, those 2. Oh, just the first one. Just the first one? So 7822. Okay, good. So
it's only 7222,
okay,
yeah.
Good. Okay, thank you, Councillor Downs. Councillor Leary for Public Facilities.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee met Wednesday, September 6th. The first item, actually, 301-23, it's a request for a water extension on Washington Street. I had sent a message to my committee earlier today. As you can see, the vote was split. There wasn't consensus. There were still questions. So I'm requesting a suspension of the rules so that I may poll my committee this evening to request that this item be sent back to the Public Facilities Committee for one of our October meetings.
Okay, Counselor Leary would like a suspension of the rules to send this item back to committee. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Okay, you've got it.
Okay, thank you very much. 302-23, this is Comcast, Crown Castle, Astound, TT Systems, and Verizon.
Just a moment, Counselor Leary.
I'm sorry. Oh, I thought we did poll the committee.
Well, yeah, but we pulled the whole council, so you did sort of pull the committee, but
Oh, I thought, okay, sorry. I thought that was the Public Facilities Committee. The other people aren't supposed to say anything. Excuse me for that. So may I poll the Public Facilities Committee?
You most certainly may.
And all those that would be in favor of having that item come back before us at one of our October meetings, which would either be the 4th or the 18th, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, are there any abstentions or any nays? Okay, I think I did that right. Okay, let me continue. 302-23. Comcast, Astound, Crown Castle, TT Systems, Verizon. This is on behalf of Northland. It's a petition for a grant of location for installing underground telecommunications conduit that's going to cross Needham Street, and that's going to serve the Northland development. Public Facilities approved that 6-0. 303-23 is on second call, as well as 304-23, also on second call. And then Public Facilities met jointly with Public Safety and Transportation. This was a discussion regarding snow clearing and operations and enforcement. And Public Facilities voted no action necessary, 5-0. And that's the end of the report.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Counselor Grossman for the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee met on Monday, September 11th. Item 305-23, the acceptance of a donation from the Garden City Preservation Society was approved 8-0. And the next item is on second call. With that, I move the report.
Thank you very much. Counselor Laredo for the Real Property Reuse Committee.
There is no report this evening, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Okay. I think we can call the roll.
Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
Counselor Crossley.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile. Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz. Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton. Counselor Oliver.
Aye, with the exception of 293-23, for which I vote no.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 22 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent, with the exception of item number 293-23, with 21 yeas, 21 yeas, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
Thank you very much. So I know many people are here to hear the mayor. Some people may be here to hear an item that's on second call. We are having the capital improvement presentation now between first and second call. So we're going to send out for the mayor, and we'll have that presentation, and then we'll get back to the items on second call. So Councilors Leary and Baker, would you be the team that goes to fetch the mayor? And Mr. Yo, I guess.
everybody. Is this on? Yes? It's on? Okay. No, it doesn't sound like it's on. Okay, try again. How about the, whoa, that's really on. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I hope you're not too wet on another rainy day here in the city of Newton. I am very, very pleased to be with you tonight to deliver to the City Council our capital improvement plan for the next 5 years, fiscal year 2025 to FY 2029. This is an exciting period with so many wonderful infrastructure projects moving forward that allow us to better serve our students, our older residents, our park and recreation users, and our drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians, among others. One of our major priorities is to improve road conditions, make traffic flow a bit more smoothly and a lot more safely, and make Newton better for people walking and bicycling. We're embarking on this much-needed work over the next 5 years on a firmer footing than in years past. With Waverly and Ward, I'm just looking at the counselors from Ward 9 of Ward 7, with Waverly and Ward, Chestnut and Walnut, Cherry and Albemarle, Woodward and Crafts, Watertown and Adams, Lowell and Homer, Comm Ave and Washington, California and Concord, and 54 residential streets that were in the worst condition, either repaved or currently under construction. With this CIP, a lot more roads will be paved. More sidewalks will be replaced, more bike lanes will be created. We will add to the 21 rectangular rapid flashing beacons at crosswalks we're installing in 2023, finish the first ever bike pedestrian plan, rebuild Petty Square in Upper Falls, and finish designs for the Village Center in Newton Highlands and the Washington Street pilot. And I'm grateful to Jim McGonigal, our commissioner, and Sean Sullivan, our deputy commissioner, who are joining us tonight. Can we please say thank you to the two of them? On the school side, we move our construction team from the fabulous new permanent home for our early childhood program over to the Lincoln Elliott Elementary School with a groundbreaking in December, even as we finish up the designs for 3 more elementary schools, Countryside, Franklin, and Horace Mann. Meanwhile, the Ward and Underwood communities are deeply interested in decisions the school committee will make on those 2 important elementary schools. I also expect we will have an opportunity to use free cash for school maintenance projects. More on this in a minute. The Newton Center for Active Living, or NewCal, will move forward for our older residents. When we only received 1 bid from 1 construction company, and that bid was significantly higher than our professional cost estimate, we decided to put it back out on the street. Josh Morse, our Public Buildings Commissioner, is working hard to drum up more bidders. We should have more information and a better idea of schedule and cost by year end. At the library, we're turning from the amazing children's room expansion and renovation to the critically important heating, ventilation, and air conditioning makeover. The capital improvement program also includes significant investments in many other buildings. Chief among them are police headquarters and annex. We need to move quickly to build on the substantial HVAC and IT infrastructure improvements recently completed at NPD headquarters. The police facilities need improvements in a lot of areas. Community spaces, training rooms, the evidence room, the parking lot, bathrooms, workspaces, and more. The CIP also includes investments at firehouses, DPW facilities, and City Hall. Parks and recreation facilities get a lot of TLC. A new outdoor Gath Pool complex will open next summer. Join me, Commissioner of Parks, Recreation, and Culture, Nicole Banks, who is also with us tonight. Thank you to Nicole. And Friends of Albemarle at the groundbreaking this Friday at 6 p.m. Sitting with Nicole also are 4 members of the Parks and Recreation Commission. I'm so grateful for your work. Next month, come to the ribbon cutting for the great accessible walkways and a fishing platform at Crystal Lakes, Livingston Cove. We also invest in our fields and parks. We replaced the 2 synthetic turf fields at Newton South this summer, both with lights. Now we're turning to 2 synthetic turf fields with lights for Newton North, one right at the school and the other at Albemarle. We're also moving forward with a lot of investments in grass fields at Albemarle, Burr, and McGrath, with a shout out to the Community Preservation Commission and our youth leagues for their financial support. Tennis, pickleball, and basketball courts get investments. Thank you, Font, for your help, as well as playgrounds. And we're actively exploring replacing the former railroad bridge over the Charles at Christina Street. We will invest in our critical underground systems. And to Councillor Crossley, I still love that we're called the underground ladies. This infrastructure that provides clean water, takes care of our sewage, and helps us with stormwater, especially as climate change brings more intense rainfall. I want to give a heads up that the federal government is requiring cities and towns in Massachusetts the requirement to invest heavily in the control of phosphorus. Phosphorus is a particularly challenging element of stormwater runoff that damages the health of the Charles River, Bellows Pond, and Crystal Lake, and exacerbates invasive aquatic plants and algae blooms. In Massachusetts, only the city of Boston has a larger requirement than Newton. We will be facing hundreds of millions of dollars of investments in required work in the coming decades. We're almost done with the plan for phase 1, and we'll circle back with a lot more information. But be forewarned, all of us can expect significant increases in our stormwater fees in the years ahead. In another area where we need millions of dollars of investment, I'm working with 4 Newton residents: Congressman Jake Auchincloss, State Senator Cindy Cream, State Representative Kay Kahn, and City Council President Susan Albright, to pursue aggressively federal and state funding to rebuild all 3 of our commuter rail stations. The design work is fully funded to make the 3 stations accessible with double-sided platforms to allow regular bidirectional service. The MBTA has said that we will see the designs at the 75% completion level this year. Let me add another cautionary note. All of us know that we've been experiencing inflation, labor shortages, and scarcity of materials. As a result, construction costs are up 30% over the past few years. While we're seeing some indications that the construction market may start to cool off, we do not see signs of deflation. The sharp increase in costs will invariably mean stretching out our capital improvements with the completion of infrastructure projects taking longer than we would prefer. I also have some good news to share from City of Newton Comptroller Steve Curley. When we put together our 5-year financial forecast delivered to the City Council 2 weeks ago, we asked him to provide us with a fiscal year 2024 free cash estimate. Steve let us know earlier today that while closing out the FY24 books, he has determined that there is $5.3 million more in free cash expected to be certified this fall than he had originally calculated. This is the result of having not included the unappropriated free cash of $5.3 million from last year, FY 2023, that closes out at year end to this year's free cash. This is actually wonderful news. The Operations Booster Stabilization Fund allows us to use one-time monies and create an account that will pay long-term dividends. The Stabilization Fund is important for the longer-term financial health of the Newton Public Schools and the City of Newton. Addressing the here and now with one-time funds is also important. Once the free cash is certified, we can use a great deal of it to fund important real-time projects now, including roads and sidewalks, school and city buildings, parks and recreation facilities, and other capital projects. Prioritizing these immediate term needs that have real-time positive and tangible impacts will be done with the input of our elected bodies. Each and every use of free cash will come to the City Council for approval, just as the Operations Booster Stabilization Fund is before you tonight. The capital assets of the City of Newton are community treasures. We know that many of our treasures are in need of substantial investment. If we follow the course charted by this CIP with discipline and determination, we will be well on our way to fulfilling that Athenian oath of old that appears on the walls of Newton North, to transmit our good city greater, better, and more beautiful than it was transmitted to us. Let me close with a few thank yous. I am grateful to our residents who voted to move forward with the Countryside and Franklin Elementary School projects in March. I'm thankful to the Newton Retirement Board for their collaboration, which helped move the Horace Mann Elementary School project ahead. I'm grateful to the many neighborhood groups and leagues that help fund investments in parks, playgrounds, and fields. I'm consistently impressed with the work done by people like Luis Perez de Maurizi and Alex Balcarce in planning our work and overseeing the construction. Our commissioners, directors, and chiefs on the city side, and Stephanie Gilman, Liam Hurley, and Dave Stickney on the school side invest a lot of hours figuring out what we should be doing. Maureen Lemieux, our CFO, analyzes what we can afford. And Jonathan Yo, our COO, is the leader, coordinator, and chief collaborator on our many capital improvement projects. And then there's you and the school committee members. These two groups guide the prioritization process and help us sort through the many details so that these projects become the best versions of themselves. I'm grateful to each of you. I'm grateful to all of you. And with President Albright's permission, I will now yield the floor to COO Yo to elaborate on the contents of our FY 2025 to FY 2029 Capital Improvement Plan. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. While we're getting our presentation up and running, it is my great honor to once again present the Capital Improvement Plan to the City Council. This is for the years FY 25 through 29. Next slide, please. Oh, I have the clicker. Thank you. Okay. This year, the CIP includes 333 new and continuing projects that use a variety of funding sources. Last year was 222, so we seem to be on a trend. We added 111 projects, which I'll get to in just a minute. Total investment of about $1.2 billion, of which about $193 million is during the 5-year period, 25 through 29, and $145 million is to be docketed during the remainder of this fiscal year. That includes, as the mayor mentioned, the 2 debt exclusion projects, Countryside and Franklin. We did make substantive changes to this CIP compared to the FY24 plan that was approved back in June. And we are now showing, due to the rise in the number of projects in water, sewer, and stormwater, we are now showing those projects separately from the main CIP group. So when you get your main document and when you see it online, you will see the 2 groups split out into separate lists. Currently, there are 41 of the water, sewer, stormwater projects and 292 of the main group. We did add 129 projects this year. 111 of them were public buildings department, all school projects. Josh Morse did a very substantial review of all of the needs of all of our school buildings. It took him about 6 months to complete. He essentially recreated and renewed some existing projects, but then found new needs over the long term. Nothing immediate, but things that need to get done over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. So that's 111. There are 11 new Parks, Recreation, and Culture Department projects, everything from Spears Garden to the Newton South High School tennis light replacement to Captain Ryan Park, and other sort of park projects, tennis court projects, and some eventual projects like replacing the synthetic turf at Newton South that we just eventually in the year 2034. There is a planning department project, the Christina Street Bridge, as the mayor mentioned. There's 1 new fire department project. And then there are 5 new public works department projects that are all phosphorus control, which I will get to in just a minute. I always like to show our completed projects for the year. This is, as the mayor recalled, the Newton Early Childhood Program, which at the old Horace Mann School on Watertown Street. This project has been an enormous success for the facility's leaders. It's an all-electric, our first all-electric school and net zero school. There will be many more to come. And here was the groundbreaking that some of you were able to attend back in January. As the mayor mentioned, we also have completed the Newton South track and synthetic fields replacement projects at both, we'll call it the Lions Drive, formerly known as Brandeis Road field, and the main stadium field and track. As you can see, I encourage all of you to get down there at some point and check them out. Both the principal and the athletic director are incredibly happy with the product. The teams are out there, and I think some point soon we'll be having a ribbon cutting. I don't know what you call it, but so that will be coming up soon. And the field lights are working incredibly well. This is a drone image from above the stadium that was done a number of months ago. Just shows just how dark it gets around the stadium and how directed these nice new field lights are activated. Another completed project is the Horace Mann Playground. You can see lots of happy students out there with staff on this new larger set of climbing structures and devices here. So this playground will stay exactly as is with the addition and renovations to the existing building. We've come to substantial completion on the Wobbin Hill Covered Storage Reservoir, which is an 1891 facility. It's our source, in-city source of MWRA treated drinking water. Huge improvements to this facility, rehabbing the core to the building and replacing valves and pipes and cleaning and inspecting the chambers there so that we're all provided nice, clean drinking water on a reliable basis. All right, let me get to the Transportation Network Improvement Program, which starts with road paving. And here's a nice image from just yesterday on Lowell Ave. This is from Washington to Walnut of the bonded wearing course treatment above the old concrete panels on Lowell Ave. And I will show you some more images. But this is the result of a very busy 2023 road construction program. And as you can see in yellow, the many streets that are being worked on earlier this year and over the next few months. Over the last 6 years, this city has been very focused on road work, and you can see the different years. All of these maps are available on Public Works website. This year is very busy due to the investment of the ARPA funds, $4 million for the Neighborhood Road Paving Initiative. And this is set in 2 years, so there were, I think it's 51 roads here, a big bunch north of the Pike and others south of the Pike. These are smaller roads that had PCIs, pavement condition indexes, below 55, which is not great. And so we've really focused scientifically on the roads that need the most work. In addition, there are a number of other roads, some larger ones like Wheeler and Homer and Walnut and Waltham and the Carriageway and Lowell Ave and the whole Islington Peninsula that are being treated this year. Funding for the program has largely averaged about 9.5, actually a little bit over 9.5 million a year. During the pandemic, we obviously took a hit in revenues for the city, rebounded into 22 and certainly 23, and we've invested over $50 million from the general fund and Chapter 90, and then another $10.5 million in ARPA funds into the program. We expect to be back, as the mayor mentioned, probably this fall, for some large requests for free cash, use of free cash for road paving. The Pavement Condition Index is really the scientific way of analyzing the conditions of our roads. We started back at 62.5, which is not great. We've been rising slowly. We're now up to 72.6. There's still, it looks like we're getting close, but there really is a tremendous amount of work still to be done over the next 5 to 10 years to really get us up to that 80 best practice goal. Here's some other images. This is the actual paving along Lowell Ave of the bonded wearing course treatment. Here's some, Park and Sargent milling work shown here. The pavement, I think, is coming very soon. Next door on Waverly, again, milling work here at this intersection, paving to come soon. And here's an example of the Islington Road area, some paving there, so this entire peninsula will be treated. And this is one of the many neighborhood roads, Fessenden Street in West Newton. Paving is now completed on this. Jumping over to pedestrian infrastructure improvements, as I think many of you know, if you've attended the PF meetings or seen the slideshows done by our consultants from EP, we've done an analysis of all the conditions of our sidewalks across the city, analyzed their conditions, and then done a priority basis based on pedestrian routes and schools and roads and conditions. So this is underway. It's a little hard to see with the text at the bottom, but we have a number of school areas targeted for over the next 5 years. Starting, I think it's Williams and there's one other school there. Ward, thank you. All right. Oh, I lost my connection here. Oh, thank you. All right, related is traffic calming and curb ramps. A number of traffic calming projects are underway as we speak. Lowell Ave at Hull and Highland near Newton North. Great challenging intersection right next to the high school. The Waltham Street traffic calming at Derby and Fairway in the upper right. New curb ramp here on the carriageway, the Comm Ave carriageway at Beaumont. I happened to get a family with little kids bicycling right up that curb ramp maybe for the first time, as that is now complete. A couple other projects that are going on in DPW, the Newton Highlands Village Center project. The design is in progress. Just a shout out that there is a public meeting, number 4, coming up on October 12th, correct, Commissioner? And so please attend that if possible. And I think many of you have been involved in giving input into this very important project and design. As the mayor mentioned, Petty Square in Newton Upper Falls is going to be under construction quite soon. This project will really improve the safety of this intersection for drivers, bicyclists, and pedestrians, and really make this area fresh and more beautiful and inviting through a whole series of project upgrades. The state is also very active here in Newton on a variety of projects. I made this map today trying to figure out where all of them were, and it's actually a longer list than I had realized. Everything from the Needham Street project to Newton Highlands T-Station to the commuter rail station projects, the Comm Ave carriageway path and Hammond Pond Parkway, the Newton Corner ramp and circle improvements, the Albemarle at Crafts intersection up in West Newton, Newtonville up here, Parker Street at Route 9, improvements, the Safe Routes to School project that the state is undertaking, the D-Branch accessibility projects in Waban and Elliott and over in Chestnut Hill, and also the Charles River Greenway pedestrian bridge over in Auburndale. So there are a number of projects that our staff here in the city are working closely with state officials to make sure that all of these projects really meet our needs as Newtonians. Another huge project that is underway right now is the water meter replacement program. This is the dashboard that's now live on our website, showing the progress of the project. Nearly 2,000 meters have been installed, 28,000 to go, starting in Auburndale and West Newton, and then moving across the city. It will take about 18 to 24 months to complete. Each meter replacement is only about 30 minutes in time, and we're getting pretty good response from people to set up appointments and get into their basements. The customer online portal on our website is expected to be live in this fall, which is going to help everyone track their water use. The last mayor's update had lots of details on this project, in case you did not see that. All right, the Water System Capital Improvement Project program is continuing at that $5 million per year investment in our water main rehabilitation, trying to target about 15,000 feet per year. We're going to be working on about 46 different streets over the next 6 years. One important thing that we're doing as required by the state and federal government is to complete a system-wide lead and copper inventory for submission to the EPA next year. So we'll be briefing the City Council as that moves along. As the mayor mentioned, we are now required by the federal and state government to complete a phosphorus control plan. This is the phase 1 plan that is about to be submitted to the government. Woodard & Curran, our consultants, helped complete this as a 700-page document. And on the right are some of the initial projects that we've now included in the CIP, including some underground phosphorus control storage or control facilities at the Resource Recovery Center, as well as at the Franklin and Countryside School projects, at both the Craft Street Yard and the Elliott Street Yard, as well as up at the Davis Playground as well. So we have a number of these projects that we're going to get going on in the very near future. All right, switching gears out of DPW over to other departments. The Lincoln Elliott School, as the mayor mentioned, is out to bid. Very exciting project for that school community. And here's the interior space. Many of you have been to the presentations on this project. We'll also be renovating, a complete renovation of the auditorium for both school and community use. The Countryside School, the design is in progress, and this is the latest rendering here along Dedham Street of this school project to be funded through the debt exclusion and by the MSBA. The Franklin School project is also progressing in design, looking at different layouts, different site options. A number of you are involved in this process, so this is moving along with, I think, a very productive team of residents and counselors and consultants, and a lot of input from teachers and staff. The Horace Mann School as well. We've got a great architectural team looking at the addition to the school over here, as well as renovations to the existing interior space. This is moving along quite well at this point. NewCal, as the mayor mentioned, this is back out to bid after the first initial attempt at doing this, and so we are hopeful, very hopeful, that we will be getting some bids, good bids, on this incredibly important project for our senior residents and all residents of Newton. This is going to be an amazing, amazing facility. Switching gears to Parks, Rec, and Culture, the Gath Pool and Splash Park is in construction. We have our contractor is now on site. We've had a number of very successful meetings with them, so we are looking forward to, as the mayor mentioned, to actually putting at least ceremonial shovels in the ground very shortly. And another splash park in Upper Falls at Northland. This, our understanding is that Northland is looking to build this in 2024. Councilor Banks, if you're ready to be getting ready to take the keys to 2 splash parks next year, this one for the north side, one on the south side. Parks, Rec, and Culture has also completed a capital improvements program and plan, which outlines all of their both turf field management improvements, as well as synthetic turf fields, lights, and other facilities. Many of you have been at the Programs and Services meetings to hear this discussion. This is the Albemarle Fields Phase North project, funded both by the CPC as well as through ARPA funds, and including the field lights and the reconfigured baseball diamonds, the pickleball courts, and the basketball court, new synthetic turf field for Newton North, and league use, and pedestrian pathways, and new irrigation system. This does not show what we're also using ARPA funds for is probably down in this area here, a second bridge across Cheesecake Brook to greatly improve pedestrian and bicycle crossings, both for school use as well as to allow parking on this side for people to get to the new gas pool and to the fields. So we're looking forward to completing that and working with the Conservation Commission very closely on that. The other two fields, the Burr School fields, this is in final design, and this is two new multi-purpose fields and a third of a mile perimeter path and irrigation and picnic tables right here behind the school and along Lexington Street. And then at McGrath Park are fields, 4 grass fields and a perimeter path, as well as fencing and trees and a new irrigation system, all funded with the great help of our CPC. And an upcoming project will be the Newton North Stadium synthetic field and track replacement. As you can see, I may have some pictures late, but this does show the new lights, where we're still finalizing that project, 3 down, one light pole still to go. So that should be done soon. But this field is in need of replacement, and that is on the slate for next year. Some other Parks Rec projects include safety resurfacing at the Newton Center Playground. If you haven't been over there, come check it out. It's nice and bouncy and soft and very accessible for everyone to come and use this amazing playground. Livingston Cove, as the mayor mentioned, this is nearing completion, and with the boardwalk, the pathways, the improved landscaping, all to improve pedestrian movement, accessibility, to improve stormwater, and to improve and protect our views and our water quality of this great resource. And as I mentioned, the Newton North field lights are nearing completion. And at Cabot Park, if you haven't been over there, come check it out. There is the new performance pavilion that was completed with the help of the college team and college professor, which is really quite a nice, compact, but very useful outdoor pavilion and stage. And as well as basketball court improvements, hoops, as well as surfacing, bocce court improvements, and tennis court improvements. And there's still a few pathway improvements to come, correct? That's about it. Thank you. So a couple other miscellaneous improvements using ARPA funds. We have made some improvements to the exterior of the Newton Center Fieldhouse, otherwise known as the Hut, which was not looking so nice and is now, if you've been over there, getting re-shingled. The worst shingles are being all replaced and then repainted. This is going to look a lot nicer. And the Chafin House over in Farlow Park in Newton Corner. If you've been over there, this beautiful building had the paint was really not looking so nice on it. And so we have used ARPA funds. We'll also be using some state earmark funds to help the pond itself at Farlow Park. And so this is not quite done, but it's in the works of being completed. Thank you to Councilor Greenberg for all of her advocacy with our state legislators on this. And I think this is my last slide. I'll end with street trees, and not directly a capital program, but really an important part of our infrastructure. Our tree infrastructure in our city is incredibly important. The CIP does show the details of our planting plan over the next 5 years, what areas of the city our city forester, Mark Welsh, plans to focus on. He and his team have recently completed a citywide inventory of all trees, and that will be the foundation for this planting plan as well as for a master plan that he is now drafting. We have also used ARPA funds, $250,000 in ARPA funds to help his program maintain the newly planted trees. As many of you know, on Programs and Services Committee in particular, the city forester has been working with this council to greatly strengthen the tree ordinance. So that hopefully will be wrapping up sometime very soon. And I believe that is it. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it. One last thing. Some thank yous. In particular, I want to thank Connor Roach, our senior financial analyst who has really helped prepare this entire document, as well as Perry Rosenfield, our manager of financial planning, for his leadership on this. And then the steering committee, very important for me in putting together this document and prioritizing all projects. Commissioners McGonigal and Banks and Morse sit on that steering committee along with our ADA coordinator, Jeannie Fairley, and to make decisions about the rankings of all the projects, as well as the many staff from all the different departments that help prepare and develop, create the CIP. So thanks to all of them. Good evening.
Thank you. We'll have a quick break while the delegation escorts the mayor back to her office. Okay, I think we're ready to start again. Okay. Okay, we're ready to start again for those of you who are online. So the first item to be on second call is item 206-23. So Councilor Crossley, would you give the report for that item?
Yes, thank you. So this is, I'll start this over. Councilor Lipoff requesting review, discussion, et cetera, possible ordinance amendments, and there is an ordinance now relative to Chapter 30 zoning ordinances pertaining to craft beverage production, in particular to remove the
You need to move the microphone closer to you.
in particular to remove the prohibition on bottling alcoholic beverages and to propose opportunities for other craft beverage production and accessory retail. The public hearing was open and closed on the same night, on September 11th, and the committee approved this 7-1. I'll say that the committee had discussed the essence of the ordinance at a previous meeting and agreed to hold a public hearing on this evening. There was a lot of discussion in committee, but nothing much of a public hearing. There weren't people who came in and spoke to this item. Councilor Lipoff, I'm going to refer this to Councilor Lipoff to talk about the particulars of the ordinance if people want to, but I think probably what's on folks' mind is the committee moved eliminating a parking requirement for these uses. And that is what I think accounts for the one opposing vote on the committee, thinking that essentially this is the direction we are moving in for retail establishments in our business districts, ground floor retail establishments, restaurants, and this is essentially that. So that amendment was moved by Councilor Krinsman. That should be in the report. And that's how we got the 7-1 vote. If there are other questions about anything to do with the nature of the businesses, or we had questions about how many licenses are still available in the city of Newton for this sort of thing, 17 is the number, but that are unused as of this moment, and so forth. This is Councilor Lipoff's item. I'm going to ask that people direct their questions through you to him.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Gentile, you put this on second call.
Thank you, Madam President. The Chair Crossley is correct as to why this is on second call. I certainly don't have an issue with opening up the opportunity for breweries, brew pubs, and other craft beverage production opportunities in the city. I actually think it's a good idea, and I think that Councilor Lipoff should be commended for bringing it to our attention and recommending it. The reason that I put it on second call is, as the chair just mentioned, when this was originally put together and sent to the committee, and I assume it was by Councilor Lipoff and the Planning Department, it included a requirement for some minimum parking requirements, and then that was struck in ZAP that evening. So I decided to put it on second call because I believe that the original draft of the ordinance got it right by having these minimal parking requirements included. So if it's okay for expediency, I'd like to make the motion that the item be amended to reinstate the parking requirements as originally proposed in the first draft of the ordinance, And I think that Ms. Moore was looking ahead, planning ahead, and has the language if we need it. And I'll just say, so I'm going to make that motion. And I guess Council Baker has seconded. So can I speak on it briefly?
Go ahead.
So I understand why in certain cases we have been moving in the direction of either reducing or eliminating parking requirements. And in particular, with the latest rezoning efforts that we're making with overlay districts, I understand that the hope is that by reducing the requirement, you'll increase the possibility of more affordable units. If you make it financially more reasonable for a developer, they don't have to create a whole bunch of additional parking, then they'll have hopefully more money to create more affordable units. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I get it. But I fail to see how eliminating parking requirements for this new use, breweries, craft beers, helps us when it comes to affordable housing. So this is going to be something new. We have no idea where or how it's going to work. There are areas of the city, as Council Lipoff can speak to, where this could be proposed, such as Wells Avenue, where there would not be a need for a parking waiver, and that's fine. But there may be other highly more congested areas where this might fit, and I think that we should still keep some degree of control in making sure that we understand the impact and we get a complete review of whether or not there should be a parking waiver required. As somebody said earlier, if it's warranted, it happens. I understand that it takes some time to go through it, but I still think while this is something new to the city, it makes sense for us to retain the requirement so that we make sure that the particular area is protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, I have people, okay, I'm not sure, I didn't see when they raised. Okay, so we'll start with Councilor Laredo, who I saw in here, and then I'll get to the council. Okay.
So let me be very clear. I think this is a wonderful proposal. Thank Councilor Lipoff for bringing it forward. There's really, I think, just a single issue here, which is the parking requirement. I must say I'm of mixed minds on this one, and let me explain why, and why I'm ultimately, I think, going to come down on the side of Councilor Gentop. I want to offer some explanation. I've sat in land use, as Councilor Lipoff and others have, for many years now, and we routinely get parking waivers for commercial properties, and I firmly believe while I think some parking requirements are appropriate, particularly when we have a limited supply in certain areas of the city of public parking, West Newton comes to mind, for example, Newton Center to a degree. On the other hand, we routinely waive these requirements, and clearly, whenever you're routinely waiving a requirement, they're not, in my mind, that requirement's usually not very good and needs to be modified. Maybe not eliminated completely, but modified. At the same time, we are engaged in this village center rezoning effort, which, if successful, is going to reduce or eliminate a variety of parking in the village centers themselves, and that would be fairly soon if something passes. So that is different than what we have now. And for those areas, if it passes and it survives and all that, would mean that those parking requirements would be greatly reduced or eliminated. But here's why I come down in favor of what Councilor Gentile is suggesting. First of all, I really don't think it's going to do harm to the idea that we're going to get craft breweries in here. Second, we're introducing a brand new use in the city, which is good, but we really don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know if these are going to be operations with 2 or 3 or 4 employees and 10 or 15 patrons at a time, something which would be, frankly, of very little effect, or something that could be much larger, which could have a much greater effect, particularly because under the whole concept, you could get a large number of people probably traveling. And like it or not, they're probably not just going to get there by walking or even cycling. They're going to likely be driving because it's a type of destination one might want to go to from fairly far away. And that is good. That's very good for our city. It's good for our economy. It's just a wonderful thing. But why not keep the parking requirement in place for now? Put it in there, revisit this in a year or a year and a half soon, when you've gone through the process and seen what actually is there. I see almost no harm from that. And if in a year or 2 years we've added a couple of breweries, we've realized that our special permit process is too cumbersome, then we do away with it and we do away with the parking requirement. If, on the other hand, we find that it has fulfilled a legitimate need, then we keep it or modify it as needed. But because we're doing something brand new, I see almost no harm in keeping the parking requirement, potentially some good. Therefore, I'm going to vote in favor of the amendment. But to be very clear, I think there's an excellent use, and I could see in a year from now, if presented with this exact same question, voting to eliminate the parking requirement completely. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Crossley? Did you?
I was pointing to the screen
okay,
because
got it.
Councillor Krinsman and Bone
Got
had their
it, got
hand
it,
up.
got it. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Krinsman is next.
Thank you, Madam President. I did make this motion in committee, so I will certainly speak in opposition to the motion on the floor and why I think it's a wise decision to eliminate or to keep no parking requirement. As a general principle, I think that the City Council shouldn't be in the business of telling businesses how much parking that they need or they are required to have to make their business successful. I certainly don't think that we want to encourage additional automobile use. Our policies are trending away from policies that encourage automobile use, and I think the creation of parking does exactly that. I think with the large developments, I have tried to discourage parking. I have tried to put downward pressure on the number of parking spaces that there are, just for that purpose, so that we can contain the traffic impacts of both developments and businesses. In particular, an establishment like this that is focused on alcohol, consumption of alcohol, and the creation of alcohol, I think is probably the least desirable place for there to be unnecessary parking. In response to what Councilor Laredo had said, which I understand, I actually think it's the opposite. I think creation of parking minimums here can only do harm, in that it could possibly prevent the businesses from opening, and that it would make them financially unfeasible. If they are needed, I think the businesses are certainly capable of having sufficient parking on hand. Again, we are not prohibiting parking. We are just not requiring parking and allowing the businesses to determine how much parking they need. I'll be voting against the amendment, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Councillor Bowman.
Thank you. I will associate myself with the comments of Councillor Krinsman, and I will just say that, most importantly, I think that creating parking minimums or keeping the parking minimums will definitely be a barrier to new businesses coming in. And I would look to the example that we adopted when I first came on the council in Newton Center, in creating a zone where restaurants would be able to open without having to come for a special permit associated parking. And mostly because so many of the cool places where restaurants might want to be, adaptive reuse of historic buildings in village centers, and I can think of many today that are sort of under functioning that might make great places to open up a brewery and make the sort of investment in that, don't come with parking. So if we put just another barrier in this, and these breweries do have an opportunity to open in a different location that's not quite as central and is cool in Newton or in a completely different community, I think it's really important to think about that. So, I'd really prefer to see a brewery in Newton Center. I'm pushing Newton Center as a Ward 6, but rather than a Wells Avenue, I think it brings a lot more vibrancy to our village centers if we think about it in a village center. And so I would hope that it, for that reason, I, strongly support eliminating the parking requirements. And I also don't think, it was referred to as this being a new use. I don't really see opening a brewery as a new use. Yes, we're allowing them to bottle their own alcohol, but the primary function of the brewery is a restaurant with a really fabulous brewery and beverage selection. So not all that different than any restaurant we have opening. So I strongly oppose this motion and would urge my colleagues to vote on the original motion, supporting the breweries and including eliminating the parking minimums. Thank you.
Councillor Lipoff?
Yes, thank you. I don't have a big problem with what Councilor Laredo is saying, what Councilor Gentile is saying. Initially, coming out of planning, that was in there. What happened was, I think Kelly Brown from the Planning and Development Board and Councilor Krinsman at the last minute said, why are we doing that? Why are we hand tying them with parking requirements? Because it adds 3 to 4 months and a lot of legal work and money towards getting an approval. This is the exact reason that Councilor Bowman spoke of, that in Newton Center, we took a whole block there that was, every time a space turned over, it was an extra 3, 4, 5 months. They were losing potential tenants in the turnover. If you look at, Councilor Baker, Councilor Gentile, if you were on land use, you would see how many times that they come in and that's the only requirement, and it's held them up and it's cost them money, and it's something that we are trying to get past. So it was reminded to us at that moment that as we modernize and try to move forward, that we take away that parking requirement. The committee voted 7-1. The planning department, today we got the letter 6-0-1, Director Heath abstaining for some reason, I don't know, but he is for this. So it's the right thing to do. I really believe that we shouldn't change this direction. I have to say, with a lot of these breweries, there may be other things as they come forward that they would need special permits for, and so the parking may be one of several things. It's not unreasonable to leave it. I just thought we were making it better by getting rid of the parking requirement.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. I was the one vote in committee who didn't support the item as amended because I think this is a commercial use. While it's always desirable to encourage these activities, not always, but in the case here, I think it is. At the same time, we want to make sure that we control for their effects. That's why parking requirements exist. And a commercial use seems to me it is exactly appropriate for this kind of use to be sure that there is going to be parking to serve it properly and doesn't create an externality around the immediate site or for the neighbors to deal with. So it seems to me that this is one of those places where to start this off, we ought to do it, as Councilor Laredo has indicated, include this requirement which the Planning Department had originally included, and let's get the item passed and we can all support it. I can't support it without it, however, and I will vote against it if the amendment doesn't pass. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Madam President. I will associate myself with the comments of Councilor Bowman, Krinsman, and Lipoff. Parking requirements, we have a lot of data that shows that they do have significant negative economic impacts. We've also have data that shows the city is not the best judge of how much parking that we need. What we're saying here is not that no parking will be built, but simply that maybe the city isn't the best judge of how much parking we need. Maybe it's the actual business owners or developers that should make that point. You know, we have a lot of excess parking in some of our latest developments, and I just know that it does impact businesses. And I look at our current successful businesses, especially in Nonantum is a good example. None of them would survive with parking requirements. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Madam President. So here I am again. First time I spoke on this floor almost 4 years ago, it was about parking. And here I am 4 years later, parking, and we talk about parking all the time at ZAP. And from the beginning and today, I still don't think, and I'm going to use the word penalize, small business, especially restaurants and village centers, which we need. We need more diversity in businesses in village centers, should have to require parking. It's just not feasible for a lot of them. And as Councilor Lipoff said, as someone that ran restaurants and owned restaurants, and they were small, and I ran some big ones, but the money to get them open in the beginning and to tack on legal fees and coming in front of land use, it's just can say forget it and move on to another city or town. I'm somebody that will never take advantage of the brewery a day at a time, but I'm looking forward to a new place to eat and going out with a lot of you. But I think in Newton Center, I think we talked about it offline before, a great place for this would be Union Street Restaurant, the old backyard, whatever you want to call it, would be a great location for this. But any place in any village center. I moved this, and then Councilor Christman amended it on the parking. And I'm sorry I missed it, because I totally agree that we really don't have to require parking. We need new business. We need different business in our village centers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Crossley.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a piece of information. So it's no surprise that I will vote against the amendment because of all of our conversations about not wanting to burden new business with parking requirements, but that we will, of course, allow them to develop parking as they see fit. I want to make sure, though, that folks understand this, and because I'm never 1,000% sure of myself, I just checked this out with Zach Lamel. So we are developing the Village Center Overlay District as an alternative set of rules. We all understand that. If someone comes in and chooses to use that set of rules, they're within the district and they choose to use that set of rules, and within that set of rules, we have no parking requirements, and we do allow craft beverage uses. They're choosing the new set of rules. Therefore, whether or not we put parking requirements into this ordinance, there would not be parking requirements in our village center overlay district when someone is developing according to those rules, assuming we pass the village center overlay district, of course. But I think the best reason for not imposing parking requirements, while we understand that in the manufacturing districts, for example, which I think we're looking at as possible locations for some of these facilities, if a business wanting to move into that district wanted this kind of a business and they want to draw from beyond what's walkable and easy to get to, they're going to want some parking. They're going to put it in. Wells Avenue was given as an example of where there would be plenty of parking opportunity. So I will vote against the amendment. I understand the concern that's behind it, but we are trying to open up our city for new business, and I think this is one of the things we have to do to encourage that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Madam President. God, these things are so weird. Interesting comment. That was actually exactly where I was going with this from Councillor Crossley. The first time I had heard of this possibility came connected to the California Street project. And the idea that that is possible, right, in that location, I think is exactly why I have the opposite take. I think that for locations along California, parking, is going to be a much more important issue. I think the businesses are going to embrace that in those locations. I think that not being in a village center, getting there where there is no public transportation along California is going to be important. Whether someone arrives by their own personal vehicle or they show up in an Uber or what have you, I think parking is going to be an important aspect or attribute for those businesses to be successful. I do plan on supporting this motion. I think it's important to have that duality of view, because that's why and maybe not why, but one of the possible reasons that got us to this conversation. And I applaud Councilor Lipoff for bringing this to our attention. But thank you.
Thank you. I think everyone has spoken that wants to. Am I right? Yes. Councillor Malachy.
Thank you. I'm be real quick. I'm pretty much on the fence on this, and I'm actually sympathetic to Councillor Krintzman's argument about for an alcoholic establishment is the best place to not have people driving. But on the other hand, it feels to me like we're preferencing one particular type of industry by giving them a blanket exemption to parking requirements. A restaurant without the brew pub aspect would still be subject to our current ordinance, or, well, if it happened now. And if we pass the village center zoning, all types of businesses would be subject to no parking requirement. So I don't see the need to do this, and it seems by doing it, we're being unfair to everyone who isn't a brew pub. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Lipoff.
Just one clarification there. We've already done this in an entire block on Union Street in Newton Center. And when we did it, we said we would look at this and hopefully be able to pick other places in Newton and start rolling this out to eventually give this relief to everybody. So this is, to me, is another step in getting this right across the city.
Okay. Councillor Downs. I think I need to stand up.
Thank you. I wasn't going to comment because of the excellent comments from Councilors Krintzman, Bowman, Ryan, Crossley, and others. But on the applicability of a law to one business and not others, we've got to start somewhere. And on it being waivable in village centers, should village center zoning pass as written right now, Councilor Oliver made a case for a whole part of Newton that, you know, that where I think the owners of businesses would build parking, but under village center zoning would not be exempt from parking mandates, which can be very costly. And so I think let's start somewhere and let's apply it across the city and not say, well, you know, in some parts of the city, this will be waived. I don't think that's fair. And I also really would like to see some small businesses get a little less resistance when they try to open. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Scanning for hands. Don't see any more. I think we can vote. Would you be able to put up the parking requirements so that people would know what they're voting on?
And I'd like a roll call, please.
Pardon, what?
Roll call on the
Roll
vote.
call. So Councillor Gentile's motion is to put the parking requirement back into the ordinance. And can everybody see it?
It's highlighted in yellow.
It's highlighted in yellow. Can you read it? I'm hearing nothing, so I'm assuming yes. Okay, so we ready? We'll call the roll.
Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bowman.
No.
Counselor Crossley.
No.
Counselor Danberg.
No.
Counselor Downs.
No.
Counselor Gentile. Counselor Greenberg.
No.
Counselor Grossman.
No.
Counselor Humphrey.
No.
Counselor Kalis.
No.
Counselor Kelly.
No.
Counselor Krinsman.
No.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
No.
Counselor Lipoff.
No.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz. Counselor Noel.
No.
Counselor Norton. Counselor Oliver. Counselor Ryan.
No.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
No.
Motion to amend fails, 6 yeas, 16 nays, 2 absent.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we're back on the main motion, which was the motion was made by Councillor Crossley that the ZAP approved this 7-1. Yes? No, but that's what's before the council. Councillor Gentile.
So, because I think that the concept of this new business being introduced in the city is a good one, and though it frustrates me that folks can't see the wisdom of Councilor Laredo's argument that you want to be a little cautious to begin with and then amend as necessary, I want to remind everyone that this requires a 2/3 vote. So if the 7 people who just voted no hang in there, it fails, which would be a shame. Deservedly, but it would be a shame. So I think everyone should just know that.
Thank you, Councillor Gentile. I was about to say that myself, just that this is a 2/3 vote. Councillor Crossley.
Thank you. Exactly what was on my mind. And also, we have some absences this evening. I wonder if someone would like to move postponement of the item until we have a full council.
Are you making that motion?
I could make that motion. I was kind of looking for nods of assent or not.
Okay, Councillor Crossley has asked for postponement to a date certain, which I assume is our next meeting.
October 2nd.
October 2nd. Is there any comment, any discussion on that?
Could the clerk read the vote again from that last one? I know. That's not what she said.
There were 16 nays, 6 yeas, and 2 absent.
Are you sure I had 15?
Hold on. The yeas that I had were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I had Counselor Baker, Counselor Gentile, Counselor Laredo, Counselor Lucas, Counselor Maliki, Counselor Oliver.
Council Wright.
Oh, I'm sorry. Counselor Wright?
Was a yay, aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misheard.
Yeah, 15 and 7 are 22, that's what we have, so it's.
So the vote was 15 nays, 7 yeas, and 2 absent. Thank you.
Is that anything else, Counselor Humphrey?
I guess there was the suggestion from the chair that maybe we didn't want to vote on this tonight if that was in fact the thing, but I don't know why. Do we have to postpone it or can we just charter it and move on because we got a long agenda?
Either one is fine.
Okay, let's just do that.
Are you chartering it?
Before you
Sure,
do,
why not?
Can I make a statement before you do?
Okay, sure.
You know, we often try to amend things, even though we're all for the main item. And I would hope that, you know, sometimes your amendments fail. Sometimes it doesn't go that way. But the main item is still good. And to make something completely go away because you didn't get your way on an amendment, I think the amendment needs to be separate. There's a will of our council, the will of the committee. And when you have that kind of number, and you have you say, well, I'm just going to stick to my guns. Sometimes you try, doesn't work, you go with the full. The thought that everybody who just voted against that amendment would be against the main item is kind of strange to me. But I'll charter this item, and we'll see what happens when other people come.
Okay. Counselor Gentile. Well, did you charter it?
He
So I
chartered
think
it,
we're done.
yeah. Thank you.
We're done. Okay.
That's why I
That-
called you, Rick, today. To give you.
The next item is 6623. Counselor Krinsman, I believe this is in your committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Apologize, I'm just pulling up the vote. So, item on Wednesday, September 6th, we heard this item. The item is 66-23. This is discussion and possible amendment to section 1272. This was filed by Councilor Danberg and a number of other senators, and it makes amendments to the Sustainable Containers Packaging and Single-Use Ordinance. I think, as Councilor Crossley said with Councilor Lipoff, Councilor Danberg did a lot of work on this, and she can speak to it. And certainly questions. I'll give a quick summary of what happened. Again, this was approved by the committee 7-0. It would require that all retail stores that sell single-use dishware would ensure that those items are reusable, recyclable, or compostable. It would require that full-service sit-down restaurants be required to use reusable dishware. It would mandate that all food establishments required to distribute food and drinks in dishware and containers that are reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And it would also require that all food establishments only distribute single-use dining items, takeout items, things like that, upon request. In other words, the onus would be on the customer to request that they get those single-use items with their takeout meals or to-go meals. It would include the public schools in those mandates that serve food and drinks, so that dishware and containers would be reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And lastly, there was a provision on helium balloons, and the committee's final decision was to strongly discourage the intentional release of helium balloons. With that, I would conclude the report and allow questions or, again, questions to be directed to Councilor Danberg, perhaps.
Thank you. Counselor Humphrey, you put this on second call?
Yeah, although I thought Councilor Danberg was maybe going to
No, why
give
don't
an
we wait
overview
and see if
first.
there are questions?
Okay, I didn't know if she was going to summarize her bill. But...
No, I think we can move along.
Okay, I was just going to have a motion to amend to insert back the language, the intentional release of helium-filled balloons is prohibited. That would be before the line, any helium balloons must be sold with weighted attachments designed to limit unintentional release. The second line is still in there. The first line was a point that was taken out in committee, but there was some discussion about potentially taking it back up on the floor. So that's the motion.
Okay, so Councillor Humphrey has moved that we put back the ban on helium balloons. Councillor Krinsman, it might be worthwhile explaining why that ban came out, just so that people know what the discussion was all about.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm happy to try. At the risk of speaking for others, I will do my best to at least recount what happened before the committee. Again, as this ordinance, the drafts of the ordinance proceeded along, and as the committee took up this item one or two times prior to the final vote, language had been in there prohibiting the intentional release of helium balloons for all the concerns that I think we're all well aware of. Commissioner Walsh raised concerns at our last meeting that it was going to be difficult to enforce such a provision, was concerned about the equitable nature of enforcement, and requested that that language be changed to a strong discouragement of the intentional release of helium balloons. Chief Operating Officer Yo was there, also spoke to this, agreed that he preferred the strongly discouraged language, and said that the parks could prohibit such activity on the use of Newton parks independently.
Thank you for that. Councilor Leary was first, and then Councilor Laredo.
Thank you, Madam President. Of course, I'm strongly in support of this proposed ordinance to reduce single-use plastics and helium balloons. My thought on this is, first of all, there's a lot of ordinances that we have that are difficult to enforce, and I don't think that in itself should be a reason for excluding language to prohibit balloons. However, I understand maybe there's a better way to think about this, and many of our events where you might see balloon releases could be at Village Day events or other celebratory events where almost everybody has to get a permit from the city for that. And I would like to see the language in the permit that as part of the reason why you get this permit is that you will not do an intentional release of any helium balloons. That could just simply be in our permit language, and I think that would go a long way to make the point the city doesn't want any balloons released. It is impossible to absolutely enforce it, I agree. It's a culture change.
Thank you. Councilor Laredo.
So I think this ordinance is a great idea. I think a lot of folks spent a lot of time thinking it through. You know, one of the things I think we try to learn here is we try to get as good a job as possible, but we're not going to solve every societal ill in the first time we do something. So you've got a lot here. I defer to a commissioner who says I'm going to have a very hard time not just enforcing, but enforcing equitably. I think we all ought to be very concerned about the ability to equitably enforce something. And if our commissioners, whom we are supposed to trust their judgment, say I'm going to have a hard time doing it, I think we ought to listen very carefully. I will add, though, I'm not okay with any language in the ordinance that says something like we ought to substantially discourage. That is just absolutely meaningless as far as I'm concerned, and not the way you write statutes or ordinances or rules. All those statutes, ordinances, and rules, as a matter of good public policy, need to be very clear and very directive. Either you can do something or you can't do something, period. And every person in the city needs to know what the rules are. Now, we can issue policy statements about what we encourage. Councilor Leary's suggestions about if you give a permit to someone, you tell them we're strongly discouraging If she wants to try to put it as a mandate, then you better put legislation in there that says that. And that may be very appropriate, Councilor Leary, but it needs to be part of a very specific ordinance that says this is the rule so that the commissioners and other staff know how to apply it uniformly, fairly, and clearly. So I would not support the amendment that Councilor Humphrey is making, and I would personally, and I'll move it if necessary, strike the substantial encouragement language because I don't think it is proper or appropriate for us to be doing that. But I want to just leave one thought. Again, I don't want to get away from the underlying big picture goal here that this is fundamentally a very good ordinance that takes us a very necessary step further. And I especially applaud the efforts to discuss with the business community, which I understand went into this as well, as to how they could live with an ordinance that they like, but also have to deal with the practicality. So, colleagues, let's not get bogged down on kind of the side issue. Let's get this one decided. Let's get it approved. If Councilor Leary wants to figure out a way to address this more clearly, I think we can consider it carefully and if appropriate, be supportive of it, but let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll make the motion at the appropriate time to strike that language.
Very good. Councillor Krinsman?
Thank you, Madam President. At this point, I'd like to speak to the amendment. Earlier, I just tried to sort of recite what the committee had done. I want to agree with my friend from Ward 7, and I actually made some of those points before the committee, which you may have heard, I don't know, about the superfluous nature of language in an ordinance that says we strongly discourage X, Y, Z behavior. The question then becomes, do you want to prohibit the intentional release of helium balloons, or do you want to be silent on that? Again, we sort of presented those options to the committee. My leaning here is in favor of prohibiting the intentional release. I think there's unquestionable harm that is done. So I'm going to support Councilor Humphrey's amendment because I think it makes for a better ordinance. I also want to join the others in applauding the work of those who supported this ordinance. I think it's a strong ordinance. I think it is a great ordinance. I think it does a lot of good for our community, and I'm excited and enthusiastically will support this.
Point of order, Madam President.
Yes, Councillor Baker.
Just so that we can follow the language, because the conversation is about a specific section of the ordinance, and it would be useful to have that on the screen so we can see, if possible, exactly what's proposed or what's amended, because we don't have that. Thank you.
Okay, while our clerk is getting the language up, I'll call on Councillor Crossley.
Thank you. I am not going to support the proposed amendment to add the language back in. I understanding that would make a better, clearer ordinance. But I guess I want to start with commending the effort that went into putting this together. I put my name on the docket item a long time ago, and I had nothing to do with the work. So I really want to thank Councillor Danberg in particular and others who did the work on this. And I agree with my colleagues, it's a very important measure overall. But enforcement is important. The ability to enforce and to be reasonable about what steps we take first and then maybe second and third, I think is important. And I also think it's what I agree with what Councillor Leary raised, although I don't support putting stronger language into this ordinance. I like the idea of tying requirements to a license that oversees a fair, an event, a citywide event. Let the city show the way on this in how it handles community events before we start, really a kid's birthday party. I hate seeing trash in the environment, and helium balloons are one of the worst. You can go down the beach and find a lot of them, strings attached, birds entangled. But I think we have to be reasonable as a first step. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Moore has put up the language. It's It's II, section number 1. That's for your reading pleasure. The next speaker is Councillor Kalis.
Just to clarify, the ordinance in the report, you're correct, is I1. I thought, though, that the motion was to add a prohibition in, and there is a prohibition in this language, so I'm a little puzzled about what we're...
Yeah, this is the old language. Yeah. Yes, but the...
Yeah, that's the language that I would like, not the language that we approved in committee.
Right. So when we get to Councilor Rado's motion, we need the new language. Do you have that as well? Okay, well, maybe someone could read it for us. This is the language that we had in that we took out during.
I understand, but this was attached to the report, so that's why I was.
Oh, this was attached to the report?
This is attached to the report. That's why I was trying to get to the language that.
Thank you for pointing that out.
It may not be done by law yet.
Councillor Humphrey, someone's trying to get your attention back there. That's one of the people who worked with Councillor Danberg on this ordinance. Alan Gordon, I believe, is his name.
Madam President, I believe the language approved by the committee was the intentional release of helium-filled balloons is strongly discouraged.
Yes.
Yeah, this what's on the screen was not what we approved out of committee that
Right.
had been vetted through the law department or whatever.
Yes. So, just to be clear, the language that's on the screen now is not the language we approved. We approved the language that said the release of helium is strongly discouraged. This is the language prohibited that Councillor Humphrey is motioning that we put back in.
That's old language.
That's the old language? Yes. Okay. Councillor Kalis.
I just want to say that I support the old language, the language that we're seeing now, the prohibited language. I think we have to be clear on whether it's allowed or not. I think this is a terrific educational opportunity to, because I don't think a lot of people understand that helium balloons impact the environment. And I fully support Councillor Leary and anyone that supports the prohibition. I think that's the way to go. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I think Councillor Leary was saying that she was not in favor of putting this language back, but was in favor of asking the city departments. And what was discussed in the meeting was that the Parks and Rec, when they offer a license to use their property, or now Councillor Leary is suggesting for fairs and events, any license that's issued by the city would come with a prohibition.
That I would support as well.
Okay. Councillor Leary?
I also just want to quickly recognize the work of Mr. Alan Gordon and others, and of course, Councillor Vicki Danberg, and the Sustainable Material Management Commission that did a whole lot of work on this. And I don't want to disrupt it. I want to see this passed this evening. But what I would say, keep the language that it is and not accept the amendment now. But we could work with the departments to add this language into our permit system, have a discussion with our commissioners, and do it that way rather than on the floor here and now. Because I think it is really important for us to pass this. This is an important first step. I am already thinking of my amendments that I want to see shortly down the road to make this even stronger. But tonight, I think we need to pass it as is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baker, and you're next, and then Councillor Danberg.
Well, I'm just trying to understand how we're going to solve this problem procedurally, Madam Chair. We've got an item before us that says discouraged. We've got an amendment to add back in this language, but there's some sentiment in the committee, and we heard concerns expressed by the department about how to enforce something like this. This involves intentional release, and who's going to enforce it, and what is how's that going to take resources from the city to do it? I'm thoroughly and sympathetic to the idea that helium balloons are not an environmental desirable activity, but I'm concerned also about the arguments we heard in committee. What I'm wondering about is whether, in fact, there's any way to sever this particular provision without creating a mess on our hands procedurally, or at least have it postponed perhaps till the next meeting so this issue can get ironed out. But I'm not going to make that motion if we've got some clarity on what the amendment will do.
Well, the second sentence in that section is not being amended at all, which does give instructions about how helium balloons are sold with
Right, that part I wouldn't affect. It's just the question of what we do. But Councilor Leary has argued for a specific way of dealing with this without making the amendment, as I understand it, and but leaving in the language that Councilor Laredo has expressed concern about. So I'm just trying to understand procedurally where we are. So we have an amendment before us to just add this language back in, and that's the item we have to vote on now. Is that correct?
Yes, so first we vote on do we want to put the ban language in? If that fails, then Councilor Laredo is prepared to make a motion to take the strongly discouraged language out. And then Councilor Leary can do her work with the city departments afterwards. Does that work for you, Councilor Baker? Okay. Councilor Danberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank all of you for your comments. I have appreciated hearing from all of you. I know you know that this has been a work in progress for over 2 years. We have met with the mayor, Commissioner Walsh, John Sisson, the law department, representation from the schools, Newton Wellesley Hospital, Greg Riedman, the Charles River Regional Chamber, restaurants. We have done a tremendous amount of outreach, and there was a lot of give and take in this, too. The ordinance as it is now has some substantial changes from where we were originally, and I think it's a better ordinance and an ordinance that more people can live with, and that's a very important part of how we legislate. We can't, if it's a one-sided ordinance where a few people are very happy with it and everyone else is frustrated and can't live with it, then it's not good legislation and it's not a good ordinance. So what we did in removing the provision that the sale and that banned the sale and distribution of helium balloons was to try and get to yes with the department that was charged with enforcing this. And thank you, Councilor Laredo, for making the suggestion that the intentional release of helium balloons is strongly discouraged. I have always felt, and we have heard from inspectional services for the 20 years that I've been on this board and council, that we should never put into our ordinances language that's not clear and that cannot be clearly enforced. It's either one way or it's the other way. This was how we had to, the only way that we could get everybody to say yes. I am very happy striking that the intentional release of helium-filled balloons is strongly discouraged, as long as we keep the second sentence, which says any helium balloons must be sold with weighted attachments designed to limit unintentional release. This does not include, for example, if you go to a birthday party and the clown is making helium balloons. They're not being sold. If you go to Harvest Fair and someone has a helium canister and is blowing up balloons, you do not have to weight them there. It's only for sale in stores, and the wording is for a specific for assistance in allowing people to, if by accident they give it to a child or they have it in their own hand and it gets away from them, it won't instantly go up into the sky. You have an opportunity to maybe catch on to it again. So the goal of this ordinance is to improve the plastic junk and trash situation in the city of Newton, to further reduce the prevalence of single-use plastics. This has a measurable effect on reduction of trash, on our carbon footprint, on trash volume, on reduction of litter, improving environmental health, and improving the health of human beings as well. So let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I do not want to see this brought back to committee yet one more time. Let's vote this out. Let's hear the amendments, vote on them. Let's hear Councilor Laredo's suggestion, take a vote on that, and then let's please vote this out tonight. It came out of Programs and Services unanimously, and I would love to see the same unanimous vote come out of the full council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kalis, are you all set?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Councilor Noel?
Thank you. To Councilor Laredo's point, we did speak about the fact that the sentence was meaningless in the ordinance, and as Councilor Danberg said, it was a compromise, but there were several of us that were concerned with it. This is a very ambitious ordinance, which, you know, as Councilor Danberg said, took a long time to get through. We worked on this for quite some time. We had experts involved. There were compromises involved. There was a large amount of collaboration. And if you look at this, it is so detailed. I think that banning the release of helium balloons is low-lying fruit. Has anyone in this chamber seen a balloon release in the last 10 years? I mean, nobody's releasing balloons anymore. I feel like that's the easy one to ban, is just ban the release of helium balloons. Most people have the common sense not to release helium balloons. And if we're taking this kind of stance and we know the impact it has in the environment, I don't see the danger in banning the release of helium balloons. I think that'd be much more easy to educate the public than the level of detail in here about what kind of chopstick you can use and which container and whether or not you can bring your own container in. Now, all of this is doable. We're in a climate crisis. We have to do it. But to toss the helium balloons aside, to me, seems silly because it's out of vogue, and it seems like it would be one of the easiest things to track on this.
So, Councilor, I just want to say that it's 10 o'clock. We're talking about helium balloons, and we have 2 more items. So let's try and move this along. Thank you, Councilor Noel. Next is Councilor Lucas.
Thank you, President Albright. I think if I understand what's going on here, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Humphrey wants to change the language to what's on our screen. If Ms. Moore could go back to that particular page. He wants to change it there at the bottom. Can you scroll down a little bit more, please?
Is this the new language? This is the old one.
This is the old language, but this is the amendment to change it to prohibited in that first sentence. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to support that. Also, this is unrelated to that particular amendment, but just a question, and maybe I could ask that question later after we vote out this amendment, but it's, if you go up just a little bit more in section EI3, right there, all food establishments are strongly encouraged. It's the same principle of what we are doing right now with the balloons, and I don't understand it. I'm sure it's in there for a reason. I can speak if we want to discuss that later, but I'm just a little confused by that first sentence. All food establishments are strongly encouraged to use. But I'm happy to support Councilor Humphrey's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Gentile.
So I have to say, I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, why in God's name did I decide to come to the chamber tonight? To all my smiling little faces up there, you guys got it right, sitting in the comfort of your home. Listen, at some point, I can afford to be educated, and I know it's late. I see the list, I'm getting away from the balloons. I see the list of things that are being prohibited. Could someone in 20 or 30 seconds just explain to me, if I do order a takeout, if this goes into effect and I go and do a takeout order, what am I going to be walking out with that's legal? That's all I'm trying to understand, so I can realize, so I can figure out if I should vote for the entire ordinance or not. So if someone could help me with that.
Counselor Danberg can do that, I think.
I think I can do that, Counselor Gentile. And thank you for asking that question, because I think a lot of people would probably like the answer to that. The quick and short answer is that when you go into a restaurant now, you are able to walk out with a container that has a black plastic bottom, and a clear top. You will not be able to have that black plastic bottom. You will have to have anything else, a clear plastic, a white plastic, compostable. There are many, many items that can be purchased. The Chamber of Commerce and the restaurant group are on board with this. The mayor is on board with this. And the reason for the black plastic ban is not the color. It is the fact that black plastic, unbeknownst to many people, is made out of largely old electronic components. And electronic components have lots of heavy metals in them, cadmium, lead, and these items leach out into food, and the public doesn't really know that this is the case. So this is it's a public health issue. You can have any kind of a container except black. Say that again, I didn't hear it.
Okay, Counselor Leary.
Counselor Gentile, you will have to ask for silverware, takeout ketchup, thing like that. They're not going to just give it to you unless you ask for it. That's really the difference. Yeah.
Okay, are there any other hands raised? Counselor Noel, is your hand still raised?
I apologize, no.
No. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to vote now on Counselor Humphrey's amendment to ban the release of helium balloons. Yes.
Counselor Baker. Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
Counselor Crossley.
This is on the amendment.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Counselor Danberg.
No.
Counselor Downs.
No.
Counselor Gentile. Excuse, just to confirm so I don't make another mistake, aye. Thank you. Counselor Greenberg.
No.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
No.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
No.
Counselor Leary.
No.
Counselor Lipoff.
No.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz. Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton. Counselor Oliver. Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
So motion to amend carries with 14 yeas, 8 nays, and 2 absent.
Okay, now we're back on the main item. We can call the roll.
Counselor Baker.
Well, President Albright, my hand was up.
Oh, sorry, Counselor Lucas. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. It's just a question, if someone could just briefly answer it. What I raised before was in section E. We lost it. Section E, I3. It says all food establishments are strongly encouraged. Just wondering why. What was the reason to use that language?
Counselor Danberg, can you answer that?
Again, it was compromise language. It is just part of an education program that is meaningless as far as enforcement is concerned.
So, Counselor Lucas, anything else?
No, that's fine. Just needed some explanation. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Krinsman?
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to point out, and this goes back to a point that Councilor Laredo made earlier, that's the language from the earlier ordinance which took effect back in 2020. And I think that language is largely overridden by the language that we're enacting today that will take effect as of March 1st, 2024. Councilor Laredo earlier made the point that you don't necessarily get it all right. You're not necessarily perfect on your first go at it. We adopted an earlier ordinance, as folks recall, and this largely improves upon that. And this is one of the areas in which it improves upon that. So I hope that's helpful, Councilor Lucas.
I'm a bit confused myself now. So do we both prohibit and encourage? I mean, are you saying that it's prohibited? It's required to use it's required not to use single-use food serviceware or not?
Correct, as of March 1st.
So why would we have it that it's both required to not do it and strongly encouraged not doing it?
It's the old language that we're looking at.
Again, I don't want to speak for, Councilor Danberg or the drafters, but that language is in effect until March 1st, 2024. It's in effect as a strongly discouraged without a lot of teeth, but that language is in effect until March 1st, 2024, when the new language will go into effect that creates an absolute
Okay, I think we might need to see the new language.
The new language is in II.
I think if I may, Councilor Krinsman, I think your point is well taken here. If I understand it correctly, what you're saying is the first part of that ordinance is the language currently in effect. It stays in effect. The effective date of this ordinance will be 20 days or whatever the statutory period is after we pass it. And you're trying to make sure it stays in effect between that date and March 1st, 2024, which is a gap of, 5 months. While I personally do not like language that says you shall or use best efforts, I think in this instance, more harm than good is done by trying to fix it. And am I correct, Councilor Krinsman, that the new language will essentially supersede what's in place currently? Is that right? Through the President?
That's correct. And as usual, Councilor Laredo and I are in complete agreement on this.
Well, I'm always glad to hear that, Councilor Krinsman. I only wish you could be here in the chamber personally so we could do that together. But in all seriousness, colleagues, I won't move to change it. I think we should just vote and get this done. Thank you.
As long as Councilor Krinsman can assure us that there is replacement language somewhere in the ordinance. Is there, Councilor Danberg?
Yes, there is.
Okay. All right, and I think we're ready to vote on the main item.
Counselor Baker. Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
Counselor Crossley.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile. Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz. Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton. Counselor Oliver. Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 22 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone for their patience. It's now 10 after 10. I'm certainly not going to take any more time and make this later, but thank everyone. I'd like to thank everyone who worked on this, all the departments, and everyone who has weighed in. Thank you very much.
And we thank all of the volunteers who helped us get it done, including Mr. Gordon. Okay, thank you. The next item is 303-23, and Councilor Leary, this is in your committee.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Feels like there's a lot of lightning going on. If I may, Madam President, I was going to maybe take up both items together. They're very similar. They're on the same street. It's the same company.
Okay.
It's a very similar situation.
And 304-23.
Yes. I think the concern here with Councilor Humphrey is that this street was just recently repaved, and this is talking about going back in. So this is Cambridge Network Solutions, and this is to install underground conduit for fiber installation, and it's going to go along Chestnut Street. This was approved 6-0. So they're not going to be doing anything on Route 9, but they will be doing some work on Chestnut Street. And they needed a MassDOT permit to do that. It won't impact any traffic on Route 9. However, I believe the concern is the digging up of the street. And keep in mind that with this street will have to be milled and paved curb to curb. And also the engineer might consider some infrared work, which is acts like a superheater, and it bonds the asphalt and it makes the street look completely new again. And the same for 304-23. This is the request for a grant of location in 743 Chestnut Street. It's the same company, Cambridge Network Solutions, and they want to install approximately 190 feet of underground conduit, again on Chestnut Street. And it will, as I said, this street received a hot-in-place overlay last construction season. And I think the frustration here is that we're digging up a street again. And I'm not sure what the solution is here, whether or not there's more information that Councilor Humphrey would like. He can talk to that. But that is the summary. And the vote for both those was 6-0. Public facilities on both those items.
Thank you very much. Councilor Humphrey, you put these on second call.
I'll keep this super brief because I know the hour is late, so people can just hear what I have to say and then vote however, I'm sure. This is ripping up a street that was just completely redone last year, a major project. I understand that they're going to fix it fully as part of this, but it just got done, and this is not an urgent project. There is no emergency. There's no requirement to do this. This is completely optional, and they're ripping up a major street again that just had this work.
Thank you. Would someone like to speak? Councilor Gentile.
So maybe things have changed, but I believe it was always our policy that in a situation like this, a street wouldn't be reopened for 5 years unless there was some extraordinary circumstance. Has that changed?
Councilor Leary.
I believe that's still the case, but in a perfect world, that doesn't always happen. To be honest with you, I don't know the urgency of this, whether or not it can wait. I mean, if we need to, I would be willing to, if someone wants to make a motion to bring it back to committee, if there's something we could get more information. That's the only thing I could think about if people don't feel like they want to vote on it tonight.
Councilor Crossley.
Thank you. I don't feel strongly about whether or not we should bring this back to committee. If the council feels like we need more information about fiber optics or how important this is into the future of communications or whatever. But if we wait 5 years, then we don't get the street repaved curb to curb. Our policy is actually not that we don't allow cutting up the street. The policy is right now that within 5 years of paving a street, if the street has to be dug up or wants to be dug up for any utility, any public utility, then it must be repaved curb to curb, a full mill and repave to fix the whole thing. Heat seal it, whatever needs to be done to make it like new. So I think it is a huge waste when we can't coordinate utility work underground. And this is a new company in our city. Fiber optics is a newer technology. Don't ask me to say anything more than that about it, because, I mean, it's not the same as running electrical conduit or gas lines or anything like that. So maybe we need to know more about the fiber optics and what value they bring to the community. It's not my wheelhouse, but the policy is if they're doing this kind of work within 5 years, they must repave curb to curb and make it like new.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan, and then I'll come back to you, Councilor Gentile.
Thank you, Madam President. It's very frustrating. I mean, I just made a call no more than 3 months ago to DPW. My constituents were screaming for 2 years, when are we going to do Dedham Street? When are we going to totally pave it? And it was done. And the next thing you know, as you know, Ward 8 seems to be tear down city. And since we know we still don't, we still allow fossil fuel hookups in this city, that now all the trenches are going to be dug again to connect the houses, and this road was just paved. And the answer I got, because I said, well, what about the 5-year rule? And the answer I got was, well, but if they pave curb to curb, then that's all right. Well, the street's never going to be all right. Thanks.
Councilor Gentile.
So I was just going to suggest that if we approve this, as you know, we have the right to condition it. And I would suggest if we're going to approve it, I would put in a very specific condition that it should get the infrared treatment, because that will give it the best possible opportunity to look like a new street. It works, it helps tremendously. So I would suggest that we add language that says that in addition to curb, that it would be, I don't know the proper term, but it should be infrared, and if for some reason it can't be, then the city department should give an explanation as to why they didn't require it. But I think that will make for a better end job.
So are you making a motion to add that language?
Yes, I would make a motion that as one of the conditions of the approval, that when the street is restored with curb to curb, that it also is done using the infrared treatment.
Okay, and we can ask the law department to put in the right language along with DPW. Councilor Laredo? Second, okay. Any other comments? Any hands raised? No. This is for both these items. So let's call the roll on the amendment.
And this will be for item 303-23 and 30.
Pardon, say that again? Voice vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
For items 303-23 and 304-23. Councilor Baker.
No, I think Councilor,
we can all.
I think we're required to do this now with the remote thing. We're required to call the roll.
Yeah, we have to. Sorry. Councilor Bowman.
Aye.
Councilor Crossley.
Aye.
Councilor Danberg.
Aye.
Councilor Downs.
Aye.
Councilor Gentile. Councilor Greenberg.
Aye.
Councilor Grossman.
Aye.
Councilor Humphrey.
Aye.
Councilor Kalis.
Aye.
Councilor Kelly.
Aye.
Councilor Krinsman.
Aye.
Councilor Laredo.
Aye.
Councilor Leary.
Aye.
Councilor Lipoff.
Aye.
Councilor Lucas.
Aye.
Councilor Maliki.
Aye.
Councilor Markowitz. Councilor Noel.
Aye.
Councilor Norton. Councilor Oliver. Councilor Ryan.
Aye.
Councilor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 22 yeas, 0 nays, 2 absent.
Okay, now we have to vote on the main item, which is items 30423 and 30623. No, 30323, sorry.
303 and 30423. Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
Counselor Crossley.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile. Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman. Counselor Humphrey.
No.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz. Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton. Counselor Oliver. Counselor Ryan.
No.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 20 yeas, 2 nays, 2 absent.
Thank you very much. And our last item is 30623, and that would be yours, Counselor Grossman, for the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. It's unfortunate we're getting to this item at 10:25 p.m., but I will do my best. This is item 306-23. Her Honor, the Mayor requesting authorization to establish an Operations Booster Stabilization Fund to pay for, well, without getting into all the details, I think you all know what it's for. We've had a presentation from the Mayor and Ms. Lemieux related to this when we received the long-range financial forecast. The Mayor and Ms. Lemieux have written extensively about it in public communications to us as a council, as well as in a supplemental memo. The Finance Committee discussed this at our meeting on Monday, September 11th. In addition to discussing extensively the substance of the matter, we also discussed whether we wanted to continue deliberating about it. As you all may remember, we had initially scheduled 2 meetings. We had a second night earmarked for this for Thursday of the same week, and ultimately the committee voted against holding the item and continuing the discussion, feeling that there wasn't a ton more benefit we could gain from discussing it in committee, and really it would be better to have the remainder of the debate before the full council, but I understand that that's up for discussion tonight. So ultimately, there was a motion to approve the item made by Councilor Norton. That failed. 3 in favor of approval, 4 against approval, and 1 abstention. We did make it subject to second call. We had requested that Ms. Lemieux work with the law department to tighten up some of the language in the council order, which was part of the genesis for the memo that they sent to us in the interim. And I do know that Ms. Lemieux is here tonight. We had asked her in committee if she would be willing to be present and potentially step inside the rail to participate tonight. I was prepared to move to have her come in, but it is 10:27, so I'm not gonna speak for the will of the council about how we want to proceed this evening. Thanks.
Well,
It's a motion to suspend the rules.
Pardon?
Motion to suspend the rules. Am I hearing?
So, I mean, either...
we can invite her. I mean, there's no harm in inviting her in my opinion.
Yeah,
so, motion to suspend the rules to allow Ms. Lemieux inside the rail to participate on this item.
Okay, so there's a motion to invite Ms. Lemieux to come inside the rail. If needed, she'd be there, and if she's not needed, she'll still be there. But so that's the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Okay, if you could invite Ms. Lemieux in. Councillor Humphrey, you put this on second call.
Thank you. So again, I will try to save time as I know the hour is late. I'm going to move to send this back to committee so that we can do additional committee work in committee where it belongs. If I don't get that, I will use my first charter objection because we don't need to be discussing it at this time of night. Yes, we did have a very divided committee discussion on this. I would argue that the staff did not come prepared to that meeting, which contributed to that outcome. The proposed mechanisms were modified through the plan that was delivered on Friday. It changed from what was there originally. I spoke to Ms. Lemieux earlier today, and she did agree with that assessment that the plan had been modified from what was discussed and voted on in the committee. I understand that some members of the committee don't agree with that, but that's what she said to me. And again, this is a proposal that is not to generate new revenue. It's actually likely to lose money in real terms due to the expected interest versus inflation based on what we heard in the Finance Committee about projected returns. It locks in a parceled out additional spending plan for this pool of one-time funds over 8 years beyond this mayoral term and the next. And as I said, this plan up until the Friday memo was supposed to be a direct spending plan towards pensions. This has now been revised instead to a direct spending plan towards NPS and other city departments. Some people might like that, but that is a different plan from what was originally docketed. So I'm just reiterating that the plan has changed from between the announcement and docketing and the most recent Friday packet after it was voted negatively out of committee. We haven't had a chance as a committee to discuss those revisions. Most of the public probably didn't get that deep into the packet to spot that. I'm guessing some counselors probably also missed it. Additionally, I found and pointed this out to Ms. Lemieux, who agreed that this was an accident. In the drafting of the language, there is now an accidental tripwire with a 2/3 vote requirement to change it if this passes now, which means that there would be an automatic reduction in funding to NPS if the pensions spending were to be reduced any year in the future year. Again, she did agree with my assessment that that was not intentional, but that is how it is phrased in there. I would like to workshop that language, not on the floor of the council. And also you saw tonight that we received a new list of capital improvements projects tonight. And I think it's fair to have a discussion about whether any one-time projects, maintenance projects, repairs, et cetera, would be a potential use of some or all of these funds. In conclusion, I think that there is a need for compromise, consultation, and further negotiation on this. I know we don't need to get into the full range of concerns and objections during this particular motion because I'd just like to send it back to committee and be done with it for tonight. And under state law, the creation of a fund like this requires a 2/3 vote of approval from the full council. So if you are in favor of this plan or something very like it, it is very much in your interest to let us keep doing the work on this until there's more of a consensus. Otherwise, it's going to get voted down in all likelihood. Thank you.
Councillor Grossman and then Councillor Gentile.
Thank you. There's so much to reply to there that I'm not sure where to begin, but I'll try. I think the first thing I'll say is there were a few statements made just now that summarize what Ms. Lemieux thinks or doesn't think. And one of the reasons I wanted her to participate is that I would like for her to be able to speak for herself. I've also had many conversations with Ms. Lemieux and came away from the conversation with a different and perhaps more nuanced understanding. The other thing that I would like to say is I don't think the plan has changed, and I don't think that the substance of what the administration has described has changed, and I don't think they agree that they made any grand mistakes that were pointed out today. I've heard this plan described and proposed, as I think a lot of us have, a number of times over the last few weeks, and it's been remarkably consistent. The plan entails essentially replicating what the budget effects to the city would be if instead of being able to fund our pension appropriation at a 6.6 rate of growth, which we're required to do by our pension board, that we would be able to instead grow it at a 5% rate. And it replicates this by taking a sum of free cash, $26 million of essentially declared overlay surplus and associated interest, creating a fund that takes advantage of very high interest rates that we're experiencing right now, and over a period of 8 years between now and when our pension liability is to be fully funded, drawing certain amounts of interest and principal that have been laid out before us out in a proposed expected schedule, which the administration has acknowledged all along is laid out according to a set of assumptions of what interest rates may do between now and 8 years from now, but is going to have to be consistently looked at and tweaked in ways that will likely not amount to much in terms of the difference of what would come to NPS. So, that money, I guess I should say this part of the plan too for anybody who hasn't been following this closely. The idea is that 1.6% delta, the amount of money that we would have to pay into our pension appropriation if we funded it at a 5% rate instead of a 6.6% rate of growth, then is divided into two buckets. 70% of that delta to go to Newton Public Schools operations, 30% of that delta to go to closing the budget gap that the city always forecasts, because that is a responsible thing to do in city budgeting. We always push ourselves to try to be able to do more with our money, knowing that along the course of a fiscal year, we're going to be able to close that gap. We're going to find different places that we thought we were going to spend money that we didn't ultimately have to, so it gets closed. But as time goes on, we need some more buffer in there to make sure that we're able to close it. So, I mean, that plan has been the plan from the beginning. It's the plan today. It's going to be the plan if it comes back to committee. It always really bothers me to just say, let's not do the work because it's late, because this happens to be the last item on second call, though I understand that has a very real effect on how people think about it. Of course, I understand the fact that we have two people absent and there's math involved in that. I guess I'm just somebody who believes that we move forward with our work, we take our votes, and we move on with whatever happens. I mean, personally, at the very core of this, I think there are some people who like it and want to see it go forward, and other people who don't like it and don't want to see it go forward. And to me, it's a pretty simple vote. Do you want this $26 million to be able to be part of a long-term plan to help build up NPS's future, or do you want it to not do that and instead be spent now on infrastructure projects? They're both really worthy goals. I want it to go to the kids and the teachers, and I want us to be able to do things like rehire middle school positions that we had to eliminate from the budget. That's why I support it. It's really simple. If it comes back to committee, it comes back to committee, and I can certainly live with that, but I personally oppose recommittal. Thanks.
Thank you. Are you proposing that were you proposing earlier that we ask Ms. Lemieux to speak to the?
Only, I honestly want to sort of take the will of the group. I don't want to start marching down a path if it's obvious that folks are going to want to recommit it and do more work. If that's not obvious and our colleagues have the appetite to continue this conversation right now, then I would certainly ask Ms. Lemieux to speak for herself on the points that were made specifically around representations of her views.
Well, I think...
That's a procedural question.
Yes, Councilor Baker.
I'm sorry, Madam Chairman, Madam President. I just want to be clear. The Finance Committee vote that is reported was denial, as I understand. So if there's an approval, there has to be a motion to substitute approval for denial if that's going to be the item before the committee. Otherwise, the approval of the Finance Committee recommendation is denial, as I understand procedurally. Am I correct?
Yeah, but unfortunately, we have a motion on the floor before that, which is to send it back to committee. So we have to deal with that first.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not seeing where the role of the committee is. Councilor Gentile, do you have a?
So again, the motion that's before us, I didn't want to interrupt the chair because I know she feels strongly about it and wanted to respond, but the motion is to recommit. On that motion, I want to support the motion to recommit that Councilor Humphrey made. And the simple reason is I was not able to be in finance that night and to participate in the discussion, ask some questions, all things that would normally take place in a committee setting. The reason that I wasn't there is Zoning and Planning was meeting on the same night. I, along with Council Markowitz, had a number of proposed map changes. So I had to make a choice, and I figured because it was rezoning Ward 4, I went to that meeting, and I didn't get to participate. So I, for that reason, would very much like to see it recommitted to finance. There are several questions that I think have not been answered entirely. I'm not going to get into what's changed, what hasn't changed, what Ms. Lemieux say. I'm not going there. I just know that for my purposes, this is an extremely important item, and I'd like to participate in it in the committee setting. So I'm not driving you all crazy on the full floor of the council, you know, if I don't have a chance to do some work on this beforehand in committee. So I would strongly encourage people to vote to recommit this.
Thank you. Councillor Kalis, I think, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I don't think this needs to be recommitted either. I fully agree with Councillor Grossman. Councillor Gentile, it was an important item. I wish you would have attended the full amount. You were brought back in and spent a half an hour with us asking questions. I think that Ms. Lemieux, counter to what Councillor Humphrey said, was prepared. We took the conversation in another direction. We talked about potentially using some money for NPS needs, specifically capital projects, immediately. And what I'm really heartened to see is that the administration, I mean, I don't know where they keep finding this money, but they found another 5.3 million, and they've identified 111 projects. And so they're actually responding right away to, I think, what the committee had discussed. And, you know, I just don't see what we're going to discuss anymore, because we had discussed, and specifically during that discussion, I think I asked people, what else do you want to say? And nobody else had anything to say. And it's just curious to me that sending it back is the thing to do, which I don't understand what we would be discussing that's different. I fully agree that the plan is the plan. It's been articulated many times. So I voted it out. I'm ready to vote it out again. And I'd like us to not recommit it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greenberg?
Thank you, Madam President. I was just wondering if we could ask Chair Grossman if there's a time frame for this decision. Does it have to be done by a certain time?
Councillor Grossman?
Well, there's a difference of opinion on that matter, Councillor Greenberg, and it was part of our discussion in committee. Ms. Lemieux had explained to us initially in proposing the plan that the urgency to it was in being able to set aside the funds in the stabilization account by the end of this month so that it could start accruing interest specifically to that money. Essentially what happens is when all of our cash is in one bucket, our treasurer is investing appropriate amounts of money accordingly in different instruments and earning rates of interest that are assigned to sort of different categories of our cash, and different buckets of our cash get sort of credit for interest rather than others. Whereas if this 26 million is approved and put into its own fund, then whatever interest it accrues stays with that account and that money. Now, Councillor Gentile correctly pointed out that there's nothing that would keep the administration from adding in whatever interest is equivalent to what the $26 million would have accrued, and however long it takes us to get this approved, and to sweep that into the account as well if it's ultimately approved. So there's certainly other mechanisms the administration can use to get it set up. Again, I would let Ms. Lemieux speak for herself if she wants. I would say that the other part of the urgency is giving NPS some clarity on whether or not to expect this money to come to them, though admittedly, there's not a budget implication for them in this immediate fiscal year. The first bump they would get would be in fiscal year 25. So, so some would say there's urgency and others would say there's not. I would say that having the council get to the right answer at this point would be the right way to think about it, in my view.
So, Ms. Lemieux, I think it would be worthwhile if you could give a short statement responding to perhaps Councilor Greenberg's question, and also responding to any different discrepancies that in the plan. Councilor Laredo, before Ms. Lemieux does that, do you have an opinion on this?
I'm really, I very much appreciate the words from my colleague from Ward 7. I very much appreciate the words from Councilor Kalis, but I'm doing some math here, and am I correct? This needs 16 affirmative votes?
You are correct.
All right, so 16 affirmative votes, and I saw 4 people in committee oppose this. I personally do not want to vote against this without having a far better understanding of it. I just don't think we ought to be doing that on the floor of the council. But I would hope that as long as the chair is able to schedule the meetings appropriately, this comes back to us, say, in 2 weeks, not long, enables Councilor Humphrey to have his say in committee, enables Councilor Gentile to have his say in committee, and maybe the vote will change, which might be a good thing. But if not, we're not going to be forced to do committee work in the full council. We'll have much clearer analysis. Ms. Lemieux obviously has responses to materials that she provided, not more than 3 days ago, but this is a very significant item. I, for one, do not feel well enough informed on it to make a final judgment. So I, for one, would much prefer it go back to committee, but it be done very expeditiously, because as Councilor Grossman said, and Councilor Kalis, it clearly was vetted there. But it's our practice. If there's things that are important, we try to vet them in committee as much as possible, resolve the unanswered questions, and then when it comes before this full body, we have framed the issues up or down, one way or the other, and then we can have a knowledgeable vote and do the right thing by our constituents, by one another, in fairness to the mayor's proposal, and of course, for the best will and good of the city. So I'm going to really suggest that we not hear from Ms. Lemieux at this point, but simply vote on whether to recommit or not. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comment? Councilor Gentile.
I can't believe that I have to stand up and again make the plea to give me the courtesy of being able to participate in a committee discussion. All right? It's not my fault that ZAP was taking up Ward 4. Neither is it theirs. It happens sometimes. And Council Kalis, I assure you, if the roles were reversed, I would make sure that I did everything for you to get the courtesy. And quite frankly, it bothers me that you're not willing to extend it. The discussion in finance had been going on for over 2 hours by the time that I got out of zoning and planning and got into finance. I don't know what had been said to that point, and I didn't really want to hold people up much longer than I was already holding them up. I didn't get a chance to get a lot of information or to offer any thoughts. So I don't really understand why we can't extend that courtesy so that I can have an opportunity like everybody else on finance. If I was off at doing who knows what, I could maybe understand it, all right? You should have been there. But I only was not there because I had to be in the rezoning discussion because I had a number of items. It was being taken up that night and only that night. So Again, I don't understand the reluctance to extend a courtesy to a colleague.
Okay. Counselor Humphrey.
So again, along similar lines, I understand that some people don't know what I'm doing here or why I'm doing this, and I get that, that's fine. However, the people who are trying to send it back to the Finance Committee to do work are the people who did not vote in favor of this coming out of the committee. So we are trying to give you a lifeline, if you are someone who wants this plan, to have more opportunity to work on this and discuss and get to consensus, because this needs a 2/3 vote to pass, something that the staff didn't realize until they were live on the air during the finance meeting. And I'm telling you that if you do the math in this room and online of who's here tonight, this is not going to pass if it comes to a full vote tonight. And so me sending it back is giving you a lifeline. If that doesn't pass, me chartering it is also giving you a lifeline. So take the lifeline and let us go home. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're ready to vote because Counselor Humphrey is giving us several lifelines. Okay.
I was just going to say that. Can I phone a friend?
Counselor Baker. Counselor Bowman. Counselor Bowman?
Can we have a clarification on what the vote is,
Yes, can you please, am I voting on a recommitting or am I voting on the?
Yes, this is on the motion to recommit.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Counselor Crossley.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile. Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
No.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
No.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz. Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton. Counselor Oliver. Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion to recommit carries 20 yeas, 2 nays, 2 absent.
Okay, Counselor Leary, do you have a motion?
A motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Madam President?
Very much. Thank you.